More heat wave, extreme weather means climate change is real. So I'm going to play this video because people are actually dying because of the heat.
Yeah, Peggy Frank had been working with the post office for 30 years. She was just a few years away from retiring, and tonight her family is wondering just how she died on the job.
When the people found her, they said that she was burning up.
Kirk Hessler in disbelief after finding out his mother, Peggy Frank, died while delivering mail in the Woodland Hills. It was Friday afternoon, the peak of the heat wave.
I had my mom, 107, humidity, carrying the mail bag, running around with no air conditioning in the car. Yeah, I'm sure she's probably going to overheat.
The LA coroner's office says Frank was found unresponsive inside her postal vehicle. Paramedics arrived within minutes. After multiple attempts of trying to revive her, she was pronounced dead. Neighbors saw the activity but had no idea she had died.
She was really nice. It's like now her face is coming to in front of the. Now it becomes personal.
Frank leaves behind 2 kids and multiple grandchildren. A trying time for this family.
She's great, friendly, sensitive, always there for you.
The coroner's office says at this point it's unknown if the cause of death is heat related, but we're learning Frank had just returned to work after being off for more than 2 months with a broken ankle. A spokesperson with the U.S. Postal Service would not go into detail about the deliver mail. They remind employees to stay hydrated, wear appropriate clothing, and to stay in the shade if possible. In Hemet, 2 more deaths during the brutal heat wave. An older couple was found dead inside their RV. Police say the air conditioning inside the RV was not on, and that heat was likely a factor in their death. And on Friday, Woodland Hills broke records 117 degrees. Reporting live from North Hills, I'm Chris Holmstrom, KCAL 9 News.
Okay, so that's
Guys, thanks for coming.
I'm gonna get off of this. That has nothing to do with it, but I do believe in climate change, and so I'm gonna go down here. I don't know if you all remember this situation right here, but this is in Hemet. And this was a man who he's a father, and he died from extreme heat as well. And so his story goes that he was in a heat wave, which we're in now. So they had a vigil for what his name was, Eddie King. So this may be a video as well.
And friends and family are not only dealing with their grief, but also confusion. This man's body was found under a tree in this parking lot. They believe that he was on his way home after being treated at the hospital for heat exposure and dehydration. It was easy to see tonight how many people in the Hemet community loved Eddie King.
He was wonderful. There wasn't anything
So
that he wouldn't do for somebody if he could.
The 37-year-old father, of course, seemed to be in good health with no pre-existing medical conditions, but he ended up in the hospital last Friday after passing out in the 113-degree heat. His fiancée says at the time, she didn't think he was that sick.
You figure drink some water and, you're young, you're okay. It's, it's not going to happen. It happens to, people that are sick or elderly or children.
But sometime that night, King passed out on the street about a half-mile away from the hospital. Young, who was out of town, doesn't know if doctors had formally discharged him or not.
It was about 11 p.m. when I spoke with him last, and he said that he'd been sitting at the hospital all day. They hadn't done anything. He was sick of sitting there. He didn't know why he was still there, and he was going to leave.
It could be weeks before the coroner determines an official cause of death. King's sister says it's hard to believe that he's really gone.
I don't know. I don't know why his life was shortened like this. I really don't. All I know is he's going to be missed tremendously.
Now, considered a factor in the death of an elk in Hemet last weekend, and even though temperatures are supposed to be a little bit cooler this weekend, people here say they have a completely different view of the heat now and will be more cautious in Hemet.
So
13.
So those some situations that have to do with heat-related death. And so there's a heat wave set to grip California and southwestern U.S. this weekend. And so there's a lot of articles that are talking about several heat-related deaths, have occurred. And so those were just two, supposedly. But anyway, what I wanted to get to was an article that I was looking at, and it has to do with what happens with change. And I might have to click over a couple of times, but I was looking at it earlier, reading it, and I read over it, and I do believe that we are experiencing an extreme that we haven't really experienced such like it is now. And so it says heat wave strikes the Arctic and the climate enters the twilight zone. And this is by Jerry Adler. He's a senior editor for Yahoo News. And, for those of you that don't know, there used to be a show called Twilight Zones. And, the picture that he has with his article, because it is so much like what we're going in. So kind of a Twilight Zone kind of person, kind of like the old Twilight Zone. I like some of the newer ones too. So we pause now in our ongoing coverage of the end of Western democracy for a brief consideration of the end of the world, along with Robin's question of fire versus ice as the agent of destruction has been settled in favor of fire. And we even know where the fire is likely to start, above the Arctic Circle, where an unprecedented heat has sent temperatures in the far north of Sweden as high as 86 Fahrenheit. The Washington Post climate writer now recently calculated by extrapolation in a part of northern Siberia reached near this month, so 40 degrees above normal. Really incredible, and really one of the most intense heats events even seen for so far north, wrote a meteorologist, Nick Humphrey. And so after years of increasingly hot, dry summers, the great forests in the far north all around the globe are starting to burn. A forest fire, like virtually all fires, releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, accelerating the greenhouse effect that drives global warming. So this is especially true of wildfires at high latitudes, where trees grow back slowly and where there are additional risks of carbon-dense peat bogs drying and burning, and also of melting permafrost releasing huge quantities of methane. This illustrates one of the perverse facts about climate change, that almost all the feedback effects are positive in the technical sense of self-reinforcing, not as in good. As one example, global warming melts ice and snow cover, which tends to reflect the sun's radiation out to space, while bare earth and seawater absorb it. So high temperatures also cause more evaporation, putting more water vapor into the atmosphere. So water vapor, humidity, to those living in the rainforest or commuting to work on the subway, doesn't just make the air feel hotter. It's a greenhouse gas all by itself, which is why the temperature drops more at night in New Mexico than it does in New Jersey. So some climatologists have hopefully suggested that more water vapor would increase cloud cover and mitigate warming, a negative feedback loop. But the most recent assessment by the International Panel on Climate Change suggests that the net effect of increased evaporation on temperature will be either neutral or positive, an example worse. So almost the entire northern hemisphere has been hotter than normal this summer. Denver hit an all-time high of 105 in June, around the same time that Oman reported the highest nighttime low temperature ever recorded anywhere in the world, 109. As I write this at 10 a.m. Sunday in the East, it is 70 degrees in Austin, Texas, with a forecast high of 105 going up to 108 on Monday. So it was so hot there last week that Austin Fire Department responded to a blaze caused by the spontaneous combustion of tortilla chips. Technically, the crumbs and the waste from the chip factory had been left outdoors in the sun. So a heat wave in Japan last week put 10,000 people in the hospital. At least 30 people died. So it is a convention of the media that any article about heat waves and forecast fires, droughts, hurricanes must be footnoted with the observation that no one weather event can be definitely attributed to climate change. So that reflects both the appropriate caution on the part of scientists and a preemptive rebuttal to climate change deniers like Senator James Inhofe, who a couple of years ago noticed that it was cold in February and sought to cast doubt on decades of climatology by bringing a snowball to the floor of the Senate. But that consensus is beginning to break down. The rule that where there's smoke, there's fire, which political reporters have begun to apply metaphorically in evidence of Trump campaign collusion with Russia, should apply equally to science reporters covering actual fires. So Inhofe, a mentor of the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt, has come in for occasional ridicule for his belief that weather and climate are entirely in God's hands, absolving the coal and petroleum industries of responsibility. So that is fairly common belief among extreme conservatives. Of course, not all his Republican colleagues get their scientific information from the Bible. So as reported in Climate Wire, Scott Wagner, Republican candidate for governor of Pennsylvania, placed the blame squarely where it belongs, on human activity. Unlike most scientists, though, the activity he had in mind wasn't burning fossil fuels, but procreation. We have more people now, he mused at a panel discussion last year. So, humans have warm bodies. So it is heat coming off. Is heat coming off? Is the question. So it's true, an average person at rest generates as much heat as a 100-watt light bulb, which, if you think about it, it isn't really much, but human beings are fueled by food, which is to say ultimately by sunlight, so their metabolism doesn't actually contribute any net gain of heat to the atmosphere. It's just moving calories around from cropland to the places people live. So if people walked instead of drove, they would generate marginally more body heat, but fewer greenhouse gases and less climate change. So Wagner had another possible explanation. I haven't been in a science class in a long time, but the Earth moves closer to the sun every year. The rotation of the Earth, Wagner said at the same panel discussion at which he unveiled his theory that global warming is caused by an excess of people. We're moving closer to the sun. The Earth does move closer to the sun during the course of each year, and then farther away the next 6 months. But on average, it's noticeably closer than it was before scientists noticed the climate was changing. So also, inconveniently, for Wagner's theory, July is actually when the Earth is farthest away from the sun. So to save him the trouble of going back to high school, the change in the season is a factor of the way the Earth axis is tilted, not how far it is from the sun. So his comments weren't meant to illustrate that, were meant to illustrate that there are a lot of theories about what causes global warming. His campaign manager told reporters, so Scott is running for governor, not to be a scientist. So he will leave it up to the scientists to figure out what causes global warming, or what the cause of global warming actually is. So, but scientists actually have figured it out. And if the politicians would just listen to them and act on that basis, as they are doing in the rest of the world, we could go a long way towards solving the problem. So one Republican who understands that is Republican Carlos Curbelo. He's of Florida, who is introducing a carbon tax bill this week. Curbelo, not by coincidence, represents a district that stretches south from Miami to the Keys, an area that is considered vulnerable to both a Democratic wave in November and the kind of wave that comes from the ocean with rising sea levels. So Curbelo is the co-founder of a bipartisan group called the Climate Solution Caucus, which currently claims 43 Republicans together with the entire Democratic caucus. That adds up to a majority of the House. But getting a proposal with the tax in its name through Congress and signed by the president, who is fond of boasting about how much he loves coal, has extrapolating to sometimes in the not too distant future, a snowball's chance in the North Pole, at the North Pole. As for Wagner, he didn't say where he got his theory. Presumably, it wasn't in science class, but one possibility is this memorable episode of The Twilight Zone from 1961, as Rod Serling so precisely put it. The time is 5 minutes to 12 midnight. There is no more darkness, and the place is New York City, and this is the eve of the end. But even at midnight is high noon, the hottest day in history, and you're about to spend it in the Twilight Zone. We are there now. So that's pretty much the article. It's really just talking about how they want to cast doubt on climate change. They want to act as though that it'll be in God's hands. So they use like the Bible in which a lot of people have used the Bible as weapons or tools or talking points on several political issues. And so there's people that have come up with theories. There are climatologists who have come up with different scenarios as to why things are going on the way they are. But in all, this actually points back that climate change is a real factor and the reason why we're experiencing the extreme heat and extreme weather patterns that we are experiencing today. And so I believe that is true because each summer it seems like it gets more hotter and there's more heat waves. And now it's gotten to the point to where I believe this is the summer where we actually have people that are in places that are so hot that their body is not able to cool down appropriately, even with being hydrated. And because they've been in such dramatic heat exposure to where their body somehow was not able to cool down, they die of heat exhaustion. And so that is rightfully true. I believe that people can, you can be a healthy person. And if you're out in the heat too long and your body's not able to cool itself down, even with drinking a lot of fluids or having a lot of fluids in your body, if that heat hits you to a point to where your body's not able to withstand it, you could possibly die. And so this is the reason why, despite what people are saying out there, that climate change isn't isn't a factor, it isn't real, and there's no proof that there is proof, there has been proof. And so it's almost like we have people who want to throw religion in there and say, leave it in God's hands and change. But really, what they were trying to do is not put money into efforts into trying to build more awareness and to try to implement certain programs or certain avenues of change so that we can have less greenhouse gases, that we can have less of the, or at least a slowing of the climate change, because it's already going to happen, but at least where it eases up so we don't have these extreme weather patterns. And so they don't want to really, basically, it's Republicans that are in doubt, and extreme conservative people who are in the government who don't want to put money in climate change issues. And anything that has to do with the move on trying to create, maybe, like how they have cars where they're trying to make cars where they don't necessarily have to run on certain gases that, harm the environment, where they have to be stricter on, like where they had that rule where they put it in where you can't have these old cars that are outdated that emit all this smog in the air. And so now they're trying to amp up and make cars that are more eco-friendly. I know we had a lot of cars that first cars I remember were like, there probably were other cars, but I remember the Prius cars because they had a sticker on them, and they're supposedly where they run on a different type of fuel, or less fuels that have to be burned. It's another type of a way of making cars that they're more efficient and they're more in terms of the environment, more eco-friendly. And then like some of these other programs where they tried to go around and they tried to, like they want to get rid of straws. They want to get rid of straws from some restaurants because I guess some of that stuff is not biodegradable. And so they also wanted to, I don't know if they've changed diapers. I believe they've changed the diapers. Somebody was saying that they changed diapers. Some people that I, regularly have talked to about like different things having to do with climate change, says they put some type of add to diapers to make them easier to disintegrate or try to break down easier so that we don't have all this trash. And, I don't know if this was what I saw. I believe I was looking at something, I think it was Puerto Rico somewhere, where anyway, it was the place where they had a bunch of trash that washed up. And so now they're having to clean up all this trash, and it just came from out of the ocean. And so like even where they're trying to like do things to the plastic bottles, because we have, like right now it's a heat wave. People will tend to buy more water during the hottest times of the year. And you have all this plastic, and, they have people that will try to do things like recycle. And so some people say that, that they wanted to get rid of some of the recycling centers. I don't know what that was about, but I don't know if that actually ever worked out. But I don't think that has totally gotten off the ground. But I believe people think that they're doing good for the environment if they recycle, and they think they're trying to reuse things a little bit more so that it's not just thrown away and then it ends up in the ocean. There's other things that people have tried to do to try to make things more eco-friendly. So like it's saying that forest fires, like virtually all fires, release a carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, accelerating the greenhouse effect that drives global warming. So it's like all these gases and things that are put out in the air that have to do with damaging the climate or the contributor to the global warming. And so these are the things that, I think they feel it isn't real, it's not merited, it's not worth putting their money invested into these programs. But if they think about it, it also adds job growth. If you have people that are involved in these programs, it adds job growth to the economy, and it also helps the environment, and it also will slow the effects of global and it make it ease up. But it's now it's so gotten so out of control. And true, it's gotten so out of control that now it's just inevitable. But we do have more people on the planet, and so more people means not just I don't believe it's more bodies that makes it more hot. No, I don't believe that's what it is, because it did say there that it doesn't really emit that much heat into the atmosphere. It's just metabolism, more people or whatever, what the food they eat or whatever, but that doesn't have to do with the contributing of global warming. I think more it's the activities of people, like it expressed here. If you're doing more driving, which we have a lot of traffic issues, we have a lot of traffic pileup, and so we have less people carpooling, we have more people driving to where they want to go, and less more commuting, and less people that are wanting to walk and take bikes and things like that, or take public transportation, which will cut down on the traffic. It would also cut down on the fuel emissions. The thing is that people are more apt to get in their cars, and then what kind of cars are they driving? Does that, pollute the air? And so it's hard, it depends on where people's work location is and the convenience level of it, because maybe some people find it inconvenient to take public transportation. The only convenience they get out of it is not having to park somewhere, look for parking, or maybe to like cut down on their gas, paying for gas, and just using their car for leisure, or emergencies. But the thing is that we have these great things like Uber and Lyft and all these other companies that also kind of help. But at what cost? They may be economically, for some people, a great and more convenient, a great way to commute. But, the thing is that when you hail a ride or whatever, we've had issues where you're riding with random people, you don't know who they are, and then there's the security and issue in that. So you just have to be very aware and careful. But still, it does help when you have like other choices of commute and other choices of how to throw away certain trash. Like they even have where you can like get rid of things that are now that we call it e-waste, things that are electronic or things that are computer operated, where you can dispose of it, how you can dispose of batteries, because I wasn't even aware of that myself, how that plays a part into the environment as well, because now everything is more, about technology. And so these are things that, they think, oh, we're not going to put our money in this, and this is not important. And so we don't have to worry about climate change because it's going to happen. And we're going to leave it in God's hands. We're going to put our money invested in other issues that they think are more, more of an importance. It's basically a fight to save the planet, basically, which, some people, I guess, don't really do a good job within themselves, on trying to consider the possibility that, if we all help one another, that maybe things would be easier. But I believe climate change is real. I believe that this heat, it has gotten much hotter every summer. We notice that the weather patterns have gotten more extreme. And now we can see that people actually are dying. It may not be in greater numbers enough to impact people, they just think it's a coincidence. And it always is like that, isn't where if it's just a few people, they're like, oh, okay, that's just over there in Japan. But it isn't just over there in Japan. It is actually here in the California area, and I'm sure in other areas it will happen as well if it reaches a significant amount of high temperature, enough to impact people. And then some people thought, oh, it's just older people and children that are more at risk, but now you've got people who are in between those ages, and they are also at risk. You know, if anyone is out in the sun for an extended period of time and their body is not able to cool down properly, you're at risk for heat death, heat related death. So I believe this to be true. What are your thoughts and feedback on this? This is me. I mean, this may seem pretty boring to some because maybe some people don't even believe it's so, but you know, it all goes back to, you know, awareness and education in these issues. And some people think that, you know, a quick fix will do it all. I mean, if you had on the news yesterday, they had where they were trying to do some experiment, which, you know, everybody's concerned about tax dollars. Well, I believe our tax dollars are going to go into this. They wanted to paint the pavement a certain material so that it can emit less heat, or, you know, at least it won't be as hot that we have now. And they put like a monitor against the con temperature is extremely much hotter on the pavement than it is, you know, just, you know, like when it's on this special paint that they wanted to put, they put it on a certain particular part of the street to try to test it out. And I guess it was like like 2 or 3 degrees less hotter on that special payment. Now they wanted to get a paint or special paint for houses so that it could also, you know, make it more cooler, but I bet it's going to be a lot more expensive to do these things. Maybe they'll have an incentive like they do, you know, where they were, I don't know if people realize this, but I heard some doubts about this too, because of the fact the way the rocks, kind of the heat bounces off the rocks. They were like giving like incentives where, like, if you wanted to take the grass out of your yard and the lawn out of your yard, and then just put like an eco-friendly and environment landscape, where they would give you a certain percentage off, and I think you get a certain percentage off your electric bill, and it also cuts down on having to pay for, you know, landscapers to come and cut grass and whatnot, because that could be costly in and of itself. And then you use less. It's eco-friendly because you use less water, because you're not watering a lawn. You're only like maybe watering plants or maybe succulents, which don't require that much water. So they would give customers in the local area a certain percentage off for those types of beautifications, or, you know, alterations in your yard, your front or backyard. And so I don't know if they still offer that program, and they probably do, but in select areas. But this was the case, and some people were saying that, yeah, it helps on one thing, but with the rocks, it emits, it kind of like bounces, the heat bounces back, so it doesn't really, it's sort of counterproductive. And so it's like, too, people feel like we're losing green space, and green space is just as important because you need that also with the atmosphere. And it's kind of sad, but what I'm getting at is I believe that climate change is real. And I believe that we are coming to the end of our time, where people have just kind of abused the planet. And, you know, there's so much fighting over all kinds of issues. You know, we can't even get along with one another. So it doesn't shock me that, you know, that there's so much abuse to the earth itself. You know, people not really caring. They're doing whatever, you know, in terms of not caring about, how they play a part in the role of beautifying or keeping the earth clean. And so that is the reason why we're entering this so-called the Twilight Zone. So anyway, what are your thoughts and feedback and comment? Like, comment, subscribe on this. I know this was pretty like drawn out, but I am a firm believer of climate change. But anyway, with that having been said, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for listening.